For the general public, the simplest and most usable blockchain in the world. For you, an investment in the future. XION here in the video. Hey, and welcome to the Crypto Exchange. I always want to introduce you to exciting cryptocurrencies, and I'd like to do that even more often. And that's why we're starting with XION. XION is an interesting project because it appeals to the masses and is now getting a Kraken listing. As a result, it has come back into focus a bit, but as we can see, the price still leaves much to be desired. Why is that? Let's take a look at that now. So, what exactly is this cryptocurrency XION? XION is a novel cryptocurrency with its own layer 1, and it offers very special advantages for users who have had nothing to do with blockchain so far. And specifically, you don't need a seed phrase here. That means no 12, 18, or 24 words like you're used to. Instead, you just need an email address. And in this way, you basically have a payment account on the blockchain, similar to what you know from PayPal, for example. And XION relies on abstraction. Abstraction, as it's called in English, is the ability to package the whole thing differently. This means you no longer have to deal with complicated transactions. Instead, everything is abstracted and made very simple. Here we see the approach of where the whole thing is supposed to be built, and you can already see device abstraction here. They want to focus more on that. They want to focus on mobile devices, which is where the future is headed. Who still sits at a laptop or PC these days? And of course, this is interesting for the general public. You don't have any seed words and can simply register with your email and password, allowing you to access your wallet at any time. And that's the advantage it offers to the general public. What we're familiar with so far, you have the app, you have wallets, accounts, signing, key management, and so on. That's how you operate on your blockchain, for example, here on Ethereum. And with XION, the whole thing it's simplified, modified, abstracted, and really easy. You just log into a wallet account, use the apps, and basically in the background, only the layer 1 is running. People often think, even in companies, that it's actually that simple, and for most users it is, but for newcomers, it's pretty complicated. And that's exactly where XION wants to step in. They're also focusing on interoperability, meaning bridges to other blockchains are planned here and will be coming soon, primarily to Ethereum at first. But Solana will also be interesting. And Cosmos. Why? We'll see in a moment. XION has already managed to gather quite a few followers. At one point, they even had over 750,000. I think after the price didn't do what many people expected, we saw this drop. Here we see the CEO, Anthony, being asked about the whole topic and saying that a lot of people on this blockchain, or rather, will be building and are currently building on this new layer 1 XION because it's very easy for most users in the near future. And Anthony became known as Burnt Banksy. Burnt Banksy is the CEO and the founder of the entire project. He became famous because he burned that well-known Banksy NFT. We know it with all those many images. And Banksy was one of the most expensive and famous NFTs. And he burned it. And he even says he burned himself. And of course, a vision and a team also need investors. And the investors were very interesting. Namely, the list is this one here. These are the ones who invested. And here we see Circle, which I think is the most interesting of all. Circle as the issuer of USDC and various others. Here we have a private individual, and then we see 3 capital firms, or rather, venture capital firms. And let's take a quick look at them. Multicoin Capital. Multicoin Capital is more from the Ethereum and Solana space, as well as the Near protocol. Those are their largest positions in their portfolio, and they got in relatively early, just like with WorldCoin and Aptos. Another one is Hashkey Capital, which comes from a completely different area. Namely Avalon, Polkadot, and Cosmos. Those are their largest positions in their portfolio. And then we also see the Spartan Group, which is again from the Solana, Celestia, and smaller cryptocurrencies sector, which mainly, though not always, run on Polygon and Solana. Are you already finding this interesting and want to buy XION? So let's look for an exchange where we can buy it easily. It's already listed on a lot of crypto exchanges. Here we can see that the trading volume is mainly very high on HTX, that is Huobi, which is more from the Asian market. For the European market, I would recommend BitGet. We see many others like Mexi and so on, but the volume isn't really high there, it's mainly on BitGet. You can find many exchanges in our exchange comparison. Take a look at cryptoyule.com exchange comparison. There you'll find all the pros and cons of these exchanges. For example, let's look at BitGet. Over 750 cryptocurrencies listed, low trading fees and EU regulation is in progress. They're also currently working on SEPA Direct, but with a 1% cashback credit card and the La Liga sponsorship, you can't really go wrong. Sign up with BitGet and get additional bonuses. Here we see a welcome package of up to $6,200. All of this is available through the link in the video description or in the pinned comment. And then you can easily swap XION for USDC here or vice versa. Buy. All of this is done in spot trading. You can do this either via a limit order, meaning you set your own price, or a market order, which buys at the current lowest price in the order book. It's really easy to buy, and of course, you can also sell again on the exchange. This simplicity really does sound simple. And it truly is. If you want to get started here with this proof of abstraction, then the whole process is simple. You just log in here and you immediately get a very straightforward wallet by creating an email address. And it's even easier because in theory, you can log in with your Google account or your Apple account. But you can already tell from this that it's really designed as a mobile application, or rather for smartphones. Since everyone basically has either a Google account for the Google Play Store or an Apple account for the App Store on their smartphone, it's also interesting for developers. The whole thing is open source and anyone can contribute, and if you improve it, you'll be rewarded here. There is even a dedicated chat, documentation, and mobile development resources specifically for developers. Again, we can see that this is really geared towards smartphones. They've recognized the trend that nowadays everything mainly runs on smartphones. And you'll be rewarded here in XION if you make things even easier or actively contribute to this new blockchain. Work on it. Again, if you want to get started and create a wallet, it's really simple here. We can see it. Just set up your email address easily. And that's how everything is set up with the XION token. And you can't just buy it, you can also stake it. And when it comes to staking, there are already quite a few providers. I was actually surprised by how many options there are to stake the XION token. For example, you can even do it on the ledger with Myria. So this is a staking pool that was created specifically for the ledger, but as we can see, there are already a lot of staking pools, and this way you can lock up your tokens and even earn additional ones. The advantages are obvious. Wallets where you do not need 24 words. In other words, unlike a normal blockchain where you need a private key to access your wallet, here you only need an email address and a password, which you ideally should not forget, or for many people, simply security is a different topic altogether. A Google or Apple account. This means it's made for the general public and recognizes the trend of being mobile, meaning everything is integrated with your smartphone through these wallets and also the applications, that is, the dApps, such as swapping tokens, because new tokens will also be created on this blockchain, or on this new layer 1, of course, will emerge. Low transaction fees, meaning no surprises with expensive transactions, low transaction fees, and for the sake of simplicity, transactions are handled through abstraction. This means you don't have to check a long, complicated hash to see if it's correct. Instead, everything is abstracted, making the transaction very simple for you. So far, there have also been few attempts at fraud since this blockchain is not yet well known. That's why there are also few scam sites and, up to now, few attempts at fraud on this new layer 1. But the disadvantages are also quite clear, namely, ciao. If you don't have 12 or 24 words and only have an email address and you happen to forget your password, the big question is, of course, can I simply recover my password? I haven't found this feature yet, but I can imagine it will be available in the near future. But with abstraction, of course, the big issue is that you give up control. As I just said, it's still a relatively unknown blockchain so far. So if it becomes more well-known, there will also be more attempts at fraud or scam sites. And these scam sites, let's be honest, are getting more and more sophisticated. And if you don't see a hash here, meaning the whole transaction from and to hash on the blockchain and so on, if all of that is abstracted away and it's just made easy for you, send, confirm, everything's fine, then of course the big problem is that scammers will have an easy time as well. So in other words, it's simple, yes, but of course, you also have less control because you're giving up your seed words and abstracting away the blockchain transaction. It's important to clearly mention here that this was a completely new technology. Up until now, we've only known the 12, 24, or however many words to access a wallet, meaning the private key. And we don't have this private key, so it's a completely new technology. And proof of abstraction, this entirely new method with abstraction, is something completely new for now and needs to be established. Establishing something like this always takes a long time, but for the mass market, they're prepared, and with their maximum of 200 million tokens, which they are still far from reaching since currently the token supply is around 40, maybe 41 million XION in circulation. But of course, new tokens are constantly entering circulation through staking, so that means up to 200 million tokens. It remains exciting to see whether they can achieve a higher price here. Currently, things seem rather quiet around this blockchain, but under $1 is actually a good purchase price. If you compare it over the course of a month, you can see that the price was around 87 cents, which was the lowest point it reached. And before that, we can also see that the token launched with high expectations at around $6.50 rounded up. That was quite an impressive listing at the start. Currently, it's at about $1 and at the time of recording this video, even at 90 cents. So, is this a buying opportunity? That's always the question. Do you bet on something like this? Do you believe in it? And do you think this project has a big future? Then it belongs in your portfolio. If you say, no, I'd rather stick with tried and true options, then I can understand if you want to stay away from it. If you have any further questions, write them in the comments. Thank you very much for watching. Remember to like the video if you enjoyed it. And subscribe to the channel if you don't want to miss any new cryptocurrency reviews. With that, see you in the next video.